Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Universal Soldier, Day of Reckoning. This movie tells the story of a man who looks to take down a man after a home invasion claims his wife and daughter, but he didn't realize that his opponent was no ordinary human. Will he be able to avenge his family? Let's find out in Universal Soldier, Day of Reckoning. Universal Soldier, Day of Reckoning begins by showing the atmosphere in the house of a man named John. At that time, John and his wife were asleep before there was a knock on the door, and then their daughter entered the room. His daughter woke John up and said she woke up seeing a monster. John then got up and went to the bathroom to wash his face. He found no one there when he went through several rooms, including his daughter. John then turned to the kitchen and found 3 people dressed in black wearing masks. John asks who they are and what they want, but he is attacked instead by one of the masked men. Not pleased with just torturing John, the masked men then brought his wife and daughter in front of him. One of the men then approached John and showed his face. He was just silent when John asked about his identity. After that, he shot his wife and daughter right in their head without any mercy at all. John could only lay helpless to see his wife and daughter brutally murdered right in front of his eyes, before finally he collapsed unconscious due to severe injuries to his head. The scene then changes to show John, who just woke up after being in a coma for 8 months. With the help of an FBI agent named Gorman, an amnesiac, John identifies his family's killer, Luc Deveraux, a former Universal soldier who is now a fugitive. Elsewhere, a man named Magnus is seen repairing plumbing in a house. Not long after that, Magnus, also a Universal soldier, suddenly had a slight headache and seemed to remember something. After that, he just left without tidying up his equipment. After his condition recovered, John was finally allowed to go home from the hospital. Even though he still has a bit of amnesia, he is reminded of the happy moments he had with his wife and daughter when the man touched their belongings. Arriving home, John can still remember some sweet memories of his happy little family. However, the moment of happiness was instantly shattered when he remembered the moments when his wife and daughter were executed by Luc Deveraux right in front of him. Even though he can clearly remember the incident, he doesn't remember his identity at all. Meanwhile, Gorman turns out to have activated Magnus, one of the next-generation Universal soldiers, and sent him to carry out a mission to kill Andrew Scott, one of the most influential people in a separatist group who defected to the United States government. Magnus goes to a brothel where Scott is and kills all the women who work there, as well as most of the customers. All of whom are Scott's men who have extraordinary physical endurance. After slaughtering the crowd, Magnus finally came face to face with Scott. They get into a fierce fight, but Scott can immobilize Magnus and inject him with a serum that frees him from the control of the United States government. The scene then switches and shows John receiving a call from a man claiming to be his friend, Isaac. Because John didn't remember it, he urged the two to meet at Isaac's house. Without thinking, John immediately rushed to the address that was given by the man. Arriving at Isaac's house, John found Isaac, who had been dead for a long time, in a pathetic condition. John finds a card with his name on it and a matchbox that says Violets that leads him to a strip club. Arriving at the club, he met a stripper named Sarah who seemed to recognize him, but he did not remember her at all. Since Sarah refused to give John any explanation, he went to the restroom to wash his face. There, he meets with Magnus, who instantly injects him with something, in which John hallucinates seeing Deveraux. Because John was not affected by the effects of something injected by Magnus, he was then kicked out of the nightclub. After that, John followed Sarah back to her apartment. When John asks Sarah about him, suddenly Magnus comes to attack them and intends to kill John because Magnus failed to recruit him to join the separatist group led by Deveraux and Scott. John and Magnus engage in a fierce duel, in which Magnus attacks John with an axe and cuts off his fingers. Not staying silent, John, who turned out to have the same great fighting ability as Magnus, managed to cut his leg and immediately fled with Sarah. The scene then shows the separatist group led by Deveraux and Scott at their headquarters. The separatist group turned out to be the Universal soldiers programmed against the United States government, thus establishing a new order ruled by the Universal soldiers. On the other hand, after successfully escaping from Magnus and hiding in a safe place, Sarah told John that she knew him because he often came to the nightclub where she worked. Sarah said that John used to work as a truck driver and lived in a riverside cabin. Not only that, Sarah also said that they were romantically involved. Intending to reveal his true identity with Sarah's help, John immediately headed for the cabin by the river where he used to live. But on the way, they were again intercepted by Magnus and a very brutal fight ensued until John finally managed to kill him. John realized that he had great strength, endurance, and fighting ability. Not only that, he also realized that his severed fingers had grown back. John and Sarah reach the cabin to find it inhabited by an exact duplicate of John, who reveals himself as the original who had killed Isaac and been in contact with Sarah in the past. The original John had been mind-controlled into hunting down Deveraux but was turned by him and hired as a transporter and assassin for his organization, until he met Sarah and deserted Deveraux. He tries to kill Sarah but is shot dead by the other John, suspecting himself to be a Universal soldier. Still confused about his true identity and losing his memory, John decides to go to Deveraux and find out what really happened. John then asked Sarah to remove something Magnus had implanted into his shoulder. It turns out that what Magnus injects into his body is a small device that functions to brainwash someone so that they join the separatist group led by Deveraux and Scott voluntarily. After that, John asked Sarah to go as far away from him as possible because he didn't want to endanger her. After Sarah left, John walked through the forest until he arrived at the riverbank. He was picked up by a Universal soldier who would take him to the separatist group's underground headquarters. Arriving at headquarters, he is greeted by Dr. Sue, a former Universal Soldier Program scientist, who reveals that he had been synthetically created a few weeks earlier. Therefore, his family never existed. John accepts Dr. Sue's offer to sever his emotional ties with his family's fake memories. But the pain and attachment to those fake memories drive him insane. In the end, John instead killed Dr. Sue and killed the Universal soldiers that got in his way. After brutally killing members of the separatist group, John finally confronts Scott, and the two of them engage in a fierce duel that is very brutal. At first, John is overwhelmed against Scott, a tough former soldier, but because he was filled with burning revenge to avenge the death of his family, he was finally able to paralyze Scott and kill him very sadistically. John then walked deeper into the base and reached Deveraux, who was already waiting for his arrival. Deveraux tries to explain what actually happened to John, but that did not necessarily dampen John's determination to kill him. John and Deveraux finally got into a deadly battle, where they both had fighting abilities far beyond the other Universal soldiers. Although John's strength has been drained a lot because he previously killed the members of the separatist group, all of whom were formidable soldiers, he could cripple Deveraux. Seeing John as a tough Universal soldier and a worthy successor, Deveraux finally allows John to kill him. Before dying, Deveraux reveals John's past, who turned out to be a soldier who almost died on the battlefield, but the United States government turned him into a killing machine. Even the government deliberately inserted false memories in John's memory. It was as if he had a happy family and snatched that happiness away in a cruel way so that he had ambitions for revenge, even though John did not have a family at all and had never experienced such a terrible incident. Still not believing Deveraux' words, John killed him. After John kills their leader, the remaining Universal soldiers finally recognize John as the new leader and submit to him. Not long after, John returns to Gorman again and tells him about Deveraux' words about his past. Gorman finally admits his involvement with the Universal Soldier Program and confirms Deveraux' words about his past. Gorman also admitted that he deliberately planted false memories of the brutal murder of his family to anger him and make him ambitious to take revenge on Deveraux and eradicate the separatist group he led. Gorman ascribes John's success to his familial attachment instead of the patriotism implanted in his predecessors. John, who was annoyed after knowing that he was only being used by Gorman and the United States government, finally killed him by shooting him in the head. Then, a clone of Gorman and 3 Universal soldiers emerge from John's van. The clone leaves in Gorman's car, hinting that John has acquired the cloning equipment and taken over the separatist group, now determined to infiltrate the government which he holds responsible for his pain. The film ends.